Hi, everyone. Welcome to the X22 Report. Today I have Fabian Calvo on the line, and we're going to get into what's going on with Obamacare, the economy, housing, and things like that. And just before I start, Fabian, what websites do you have? You have FabianForLiberty.com?
Yeah, FabianForLiberty.com, and also people can learn more about my investment firm at thenodehouse.us.
Okay, great. And of course, you have your video channel, which probably everyone already knows, and you just write on YouTube. And let's just start off. Let me ask you. I mean, we see all of this news out there and everything about Obamacare. I mean, the site's going down. It doesn't work. It's crashing. And people are complaining about high premiums, and it seems like pretty much everything Obama said is actually the opposite of what is happening, where he told us that it was going to be affordable, that you would be able to keep your policies, and it seems like none of this is coming true. I mean, is that your take on it?
Yeah, it's really shocking. I mean, it really shouldn't shock, I guess, but I guess it never really ceases to amaze me how either completely idiotic far left wing, liberals are, or just how they know this is the agenda. And the bottom line is this: is that you have an out of control government that can't even get a website right. Dave, I mean, you have a website, I mean, it's not rocket science. They can't even get a website right, yet we're expecting, or people are expecting them to be able to manage healthcare in America. It's just so crazy and ridiculous. And quite frankly, look, I've said it before, Obamacare, it's not supposed to work. First off, they want to just collect more data on the American people. And on record, you have all, Harry Reid, Obama is on record saying this, on video at an SEIU union rally saying this. They want basically socialized health care. They want a single-payer system where and it's not even so much that they want it for what's good for the American people. They want to use health care as just really the largest entitlement program so they could really enslave the American people. That's the bottom line. That's what they're trying to do here.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, it was funny because I was talking to a couple of people, and I also said this on one of my reports. It seemed like Obama went to the insurance companies, or the insurance companies went to him and said, listen, I want to insure everyone, plus I want the government to bring in revenue. And the insurance company said, listen, it's very easy to do. All we have to do is, double or triple the premiums, double or triple the deductibles. And we have to force everyone in an all-in scheme, and we cannot continue with the other policies, and we can insure everyone. And to me, with the penalties and taxes if you don't get it, so people are like kind of forced to go into it. Businesses are also forced to go into it, and if you decide not to, the government, I think the estimate was they're looking to raise about $200 billion off of all the penalties of people not electing for the insurance. And it looks like, this whole thing was a complete scam from the beginning, because they're insuring everyone, but everyone is not really being insured, because if you really look at it, if I have a family here and I have a policy and so just make up a number here, it's $10,000 premium and it's a $6,000 deductible. Well, that's really a $16,000 premium, and I have to meet that $6,000 deductible before the insurance company even kicks in anything. And it seems like all this did was make a lot of money for the insurance companies, make revenue for the government, and they're just continually collecting this massive amount of data on all the American people, and we're forced to these home inspections, and it just seems like a complete control of all of us. And that's what it seems to me. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, Dave, you just hit it right on. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. That's where this is going. I mean, if people look, you have the President of the United States that is out there campaigning for well over a year on if you have an insurance policy, you can keep it. If you have a doctor, you like them, you can keep it. Now, it's been revealed that it was a totally fabricated lie, and they knew it all along. So, at this point, you have a government. People need to, for some people, I think, Dave, it's hard to make that leap. They think, oh, it's big government, the politicians are stupid, and what people need to understand is this is a criminal government. Okay, this is no different than, the mafia. At least the mafia has some kind of honor to it, some kind of honor code. These people have no honor. I mean, they want to enslave the American people. And what I mean by that, to be clear here, the larger the entitlement class, and already you see it now, it was 48%, it was 49%. Now it's tipping to the majority where it's a minority now. You're in the minority if you're a producer. If you're a business owner, if you're somebody who's working a couple of jobs, you're in the minority and you have a bullseye on your back because they want to either try to, bring in illegals to bring down wages. They want to tax your small business more where it's difficult for you to employ and expand. That's what this government's trying to do so that they could have a whole entire class of dependency so that the power brokers, if you will, this elite class in Washington, so that they can maintain the power structure. Now, they're scared to death, I believe, Dave, of, channels like yours, of Americans who are waking up, of, veterans and active military and police that are waking up. And that's why you see them installing this power grid where it's kind of like the surveillance state where they can monitor everybody, they control the media, they basically run everything. And it's kind of like this epic race against, will humanity, will the majority of Americans wake up in time to expose this fraud, expose this criminality, or will those very criminals be able to just completely hijack and take over the system as they're trying to do now?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned surveillance state, and it's funny because, all across the news we see the NSA coming under fire because they've been spying on, Europe, they've been spying on the American people, and Dianne Feinstein's out there telling us, no, they're not doing surveillance. We're just collecting phone numbers and we're looking at, the location and the duration. And, all they do is continually lie about what they're doing. And, I mean, what is the purpose of having a system that we spend billions upon billions of dollars on to collect phone numbers, the location, and the duration of the call? I mean, you can get that from a phone company. I mean, it just seems absolutely ridiculous. And now we're seeing that Europe is out there complaining, Spain and the other France, and it looks like Europe might even impose sanctions on the U.S. because of this U.S. spying. I mean, have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, already you had a European country, you had Spain, label Donald Rumsfeld a criminal. And so Donald Rumsfeld can't go to the EU because, if one country labels him a war criminal, he'll be arrested if he goes anywhere in the EU. So yeah, Europeans, I think, are a little bit more sensitive to this. It was only 40, 50 years ago that they had to live with, with communism and the whole entire idea of a surveillance state and must have in a lot of Eastern Europe and in Germany as well. So, I think countries around the world are beginning to see how brazen the United States is getting with the surveillance state. And for me, I look at all this and I have to say to myself, well, why is this? Why is the U.S. actively, wiretapping Angela Merkel? Or why are they, hacking her cell phone? Why are they monitoring social media and Facebook posts from the average American? And to me, I think it really goes down back to this information war, to quote Hillary Clinton, and kind of coupling that, Dave, with what the Federal Reserve is doing in the economy. I think that the government now is scared to death, and really the central bankers that run America are scared to death that people are going to really begin to find out and learn how monetary policy in this country works, what the Federal Reserve is doing by expanding their balance sheet to close to $4 trillion, likely over $4 trillion by the end of the year. They're now saying that They won't be able to get back to a normal balance sheet by 2019. Well, they're never going to get back to a normal balance sheet because all they're going to keep doing is inflating the currency. It's the only way that they keep the system propped up. So I think a lot of the surveillance, Dave, in my opinion, has to do with the government being scared to death that the American people. I mean, look at whether it's the Arab Spring, and most of that was bankrolled and manufactured by the CIA and by the U.S. government that was training these radicals. But you look at other things that have the ability to really go viral and spread. And government has no way of controlling that. You know, I can pick up the phone now. When I do business, you know, I have business partners in China. I have business partners all around the world. I could talk to them via Skype, you know, from one country all the way to another in real time. They have really no way of controlling the spread of information and the spread of truthful information. I think that's what they're mostly concerned about and scared to death of. And so that's why you see them installing this system.
I agree. And I think in the end, I think they do want to control everything. I think they want to control the internet. I do believe that that is one of their main goals, is to clamp down and completely control who is on the internet, who should be on the internet. I mean, we see Senator Feinstein trying to pass bills of who's a real journalist and who's not a real journalist, who can report on news, who can't report on news. And, you know, and you can see they're trying to push this forward and make it so they can completely control who's pushing out information. And we definitely see this. And we also see that they are trying to control everything with the DHS, with FEMA, with TSA, and they're out there. And we've seen them raid a reporter's home, and they went in there under the false pretense of looking for weapons, but they took her information, and the warrant was not even for her, it was for her husband. And we can see where this is actually going. And coming up soon, we are seeing a reduction in EBT food stamps allotments to people. And we can see what is happening at this time with them being very worried about the American people. And it just, to me, it seems like the next couple of weeks to the end of this year, we're going to see a lot of things happen because of this.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you know, one of the things to look out for, and I will say with respect to the journalist, her home being raided, I mean, you know, that's bad in and of itself. But I mean, Dave, they're killing people. I mean, Andrew Breitbart, in my opinion, I believe he was murdered for having some dirt on Obama that he was going to expose. You had the guy from Rolling Stone, his name escapes me right now, who had a brand new Mercedes-Benz that mysteriously blew up. Interestingly enough, did you ever see Mercedes-Benz come out and have some kind of press conference and saying, hey, we're looking into why our brand new car all of a sudden blew up? You know, remember when the Toyota Prius they had the whole recall because the pedal was getting stuck. It was this big thing. It was all over the news. Right. Well, here you have a brand new car blowing up and no one talks about it. I mean, I remember having my staff looking, I'm like, check into Mercedes-Benz if they've put anything out on their car mysteriously blowing up and them looking into that. Well, of course they didn't. So, I mean, look, these are really dangerous times, and people think this is hyperbole, but I mean, just look back in history. When you have a power structure like we have now that is brazen, that's run by central bankers, they basically end up killing you if you dissent or if you try to expose them. And I wish that wasn't the case, Dave. I wish that wasn't true. And I think, again, the way that we combat that is by just continuing to get the message out. And the more people that wake up, you know, they can't. The bottom line is this: with all of their technology, with all of their, you know, thugs and goons and TSA agents and all their dumbed down, you know, paramilitary force that they have, you know, you still have a lot of, I think, honorable people that are part of the government, that are part of the military, that are not going to allow this government to completely seize and take total control. And that's why ultimately I'm optimistic about things. But let me just quickly just say something with respect to the end of the year. You don't have a debt ceiling in place. It was in essence removed. They'll reconvene in February to make, set a limit there. But in 1 week you had a government, or in one day you had a government spend close to $375 billion. If they kept on that path, we'd have a $22 trillion debt by February of next year. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I will say look for them to print money like crazy, create money like crazy, add more debt like crazy, all in the wild attempt to keep this economy propped up and try to have a real spectacular Christmas season as far as shopping, issuing all kinds of cheap credit. I'll tell you, I don't go anywhere now where I don't get offered credit cards left and right. They're really pushing it like crazy because that's the only thing that's keeping this economy afloat.
I completely agree with you, and I do believe that they're going to increase quantitative easing some way, somehow. And I mean, you're into real estate. Now, do you see in real estate that the reason why they'll have to increase quantitative easing is not just to purchase the Treasury bond, but do you see a lot more foreclosures? Because I understand that there's a lot of the house purchasing are from hedge funds, investment companies, and most of it is in cash. Do you see a lot more foreclosures coming? Because I know the bubble's being blown up. But what, from your expert view, what do you see right now in the real estate market?
Well, so right now you in essence have a balance, a transfer of trillions, and that's trillions with a T, of toxic debt, pretty much off bank balance sheets onto basically, a lot of private equity, a lot of institutional buyers are buying this. Ultimately, the American people are going to get stuck with the bill. And let me explain this real quick for people kind of get a general idea. I did a micro documentary called House of Cards that people can watch. That's about 11 minutes. That kind of breaks this all down. But in essence, you have banks still have trillions of dollars in toxic debt and in properties that they own. I mean, there's tons of them. My company, not a week goes by that we don't review another bank balance sheet that doesn't have several hundred millions of dollars of foreclosed notes. I mean, take a state like Florida. 20% of every home 20% of all homes in Florida are in foreclosure. So, I mean, there's still all kinds of inventory out there that may not be technically on the market, and it's not. That's why you see, reports of inventory falling to all-time lows. Well, yeah, technically the inventory may not be on the market, but there's still a ton of it out there. So you have all this toxic debt, then you have the big central banks and the big mega banks like Deutsche Bank, a lot of other big banks, are loaning literally billions of dollars to a lot of these hedge funds, a lot of these multi-billionaires, and they're in turn coming and they're buying up real estate like crazy. I mean, in fact, in 2013, you have in most metro markets, 50 to 75% of all sales are cash. That's why people that are saying, well, if rates go up a couple of points, it's really going to affect the real estate market. Well, no, it's not, because it's a cash market for the most part. Okay. Most people that have good credit can't get a loan. And if they can, it's extremely difficult. It takes months. So you have all of these hedge funds that are gobbling up real estate. They're expanding their balance sheet as far as what they own in real estate. Ultimately, what they're going to do is a lot of them will keep certain types of real estate because it's a hard asset, and it'll continue to go up because of inflation. But I think most of it, what's going to happen, Dave, is you're going to see the bank, and you're already seeing this, or the government, you're already seeing this. They're starting to give out no money down loans, and this is what I mean, that the American people will ultimately be paying the price, because they're going to give out loans like candy to anybody who can get a loan. And I think this is going to happen after the midterm election. You're already seeing it happen to low credit borrowers who are going to buy these properties from these hedge funds. That's why this is really a pump and dump if you look at it that way. And ultimately, when everything collapses, it's the American people who are going to have to get stuck with the bill. And that's what we see happening right now in my assessment. I've been talking about this for about a year and a half. And, people can go back and see my other interviews on this. And it's literally panning out exactly like I've been saying.
So, I mean, what you're saying, and then this is what I'm getting out of it, right now it seems like prices are going up. And, prices are hitting, they're getting pretty high now. I mean, where I am right now, I see the houses market, the prices are rising. Now, if these hedge funds and these investment companies are buying these houses for cash, are they renting them out at this time? And if they are, and if they are renting these out, are the American people renting from them? And what happens when they try to get rid of this house? Because what's going to happen is they're pumping the market up. They're either renting it or just holding on to it. Americans then come in with no money down and buy at the height of the market. And then this reminds me of 2007, 2008, when everyone bought at the height and everything came crashing down. I mean, does this...
You got it. You got it. That's exactly what's happening, Dave. That's exactly what the plan is. And yeah, Americans are renting. And let me just say that these investment companies, these hedge funds, these private equities, these billionaires, sovereign wealth funds, they're global. I mean, they're the Chinese, the Russians, and then you have some of the mega billionaires as well, people like, Carlos Slim. All these guys are buying distressed real estate right now like crazy. And a lot of them will rent out these properties. If it's a residential property, they'll rent them out. And if that tenant's in there for a year or, let's say a couple of years, ultimately that person renting that home will be able to qualify for a loan, and they'll get a no money down loan, and they'll buy the property at the height of the market. And once they sell off all these properties that they bought for pennies on the dollar, they sell them off to financed borrowers that are getting no money down loans. They're going to absolutely make a killing, and that's when you're going to see the market crash. But between now and then, in my opinion, and my analysis, and all the forecasting that my company does, you're going to see prices continue to go up, and you'll know we're at the end road of this when you see the government, again, giving out loans like candy, specifically giving out loans on properties below $100,000. Most people, if you live in California, if you live in parts of, Florida, if you live parts of New York, buying a home under $100,000, people are like, well, that's impossible. Well, in the majority of markets across the country, that's what prices of homes are going for. These markets are so unbelievably depressed. And you have a lot of these companies that are buying these properties for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and then they're going to sell them and unload them for in the $80,000, $90,000 range, maybe more. It's very difficult to get financing below $100,000, even more difficult to get financing below $50,000. And so that's one of the things to look for is government programs that are going to be giving out loans in these price points and making it very easy for people to qualify. Because again, remember, Dave, the only thing keeping up, and I know you know this, and I know the audience knows this as well, the only thing keeping this economy afloat is cheap credit and the Fed printing money. Now, to the point on QE, I can tell you right now, I have contacts that know people at the Fed. The $85 billion is actually much more. I mean, these guys are estimating it's over $125 billion a month because they're also bailing out European banks as well. But they're doing all this to keep the economy afloat. And they'll keep doing it until eventually everything just blows up and there's some kind of event. I think that event will center around the collapse of real estate, and it'll go down with, a bunch of all the other bubbles that they're creating as well. So
you don't think the Fed is going to taper at all?
Of course, no. I mean, even if they do, let's say Bernanke comes out next week and says, you know what, we're going to taper from $85 billion to whatever, $40 billion. First off, if he says it, it's a lie. I mean, he's already lied before Congress. He lied under oath before Congress, claiming he would never monetize the debt. And what did he do? He goes out and he monetized the debt. The guy should be in jail for perjury, but he's not. So he's he's lied about everything, right? So I wouldn't believe him even if they said that they were tapering. But they can't taper because, I mean, the very simple question to ask yourself or anyone listening is that who's going to step in and buy the bonds? Who's going to step in and buy the treasuries? I mean, it's not going to be the Chinese. It's not going to be the Japanese. It's not going to be any other sovereign country. We're at the end game. And, under normal circumstances, you would think, you know what, the central bank, they can monetize the debt a little bit. Then they could kind of pull back when the economy takes over. Well, the economy is not taking over. There's no real growth. There's no real, wages aren't going up. It's all inflation being caused by Bernanke. And Janet Yellen's going to be even worse than Bernanke. So, yeah, they won't taper. They'll keep doing what they're doing. If they say they're tapering, they're going to be lying. And eventually it's what really Mises called the crack-up boom, which we'll see, asset prices continue to rise and rise and rise until there's some kind of crisis or collapse.
I mean, do you think they're actually just mentioning taper all the time just to convince the American people that the economy is getting better? Is that why they're actually mentioning it? Because they're like, taper, and then they said, maybe in December, maybe in the first month of 2014. Now, they continually mention it all the time, and the only thing I can think of is that they're trying to convince the general population here that everything is fine.
There is no doubt. I mean, look, if anybody at this point doesn't believe that there is orchestrated collusion between the mainstream media and government and the central banks, they're fooling themselves. I mean, they're literally, in my opinion, they're crazy if they don't know that's going on. And so, of course, you have, government and they're all working together, Dave, to try to, in essence, send the message that, hey, the economy's doing great, go out and spend money, but let's look at the facts. I mean, the facts is that close to 25% of people between 16 and 24, the number they said is 15%. It's actually much higher than that. Don't have a job. They don't go to school. In the last year, 77% of all new jobs created are part-time jobs. You have big employers or just the mom and pop employers that may have, small business owners that don't want to expand because they don't want to have to deal with Obamacare, because Obamacare, and I'll agree with Ted Cruz, is an absolute job killer train wreck. So the real facts about the economy, wages aren't going up. I mean, so the real facts just don't spell out that there's any kind of economic recovery. The only recovery that we've seen is the Fed printing money and inflating things, and so they've stabilized things somewhat with inflation. But the real economy, people on Main Street, they're still struggling. They're still barely getting by. Prices at the grocery store are going up on everything. And just ask, what I always tell people is, look, you want to get a real gauge of how the economy is doing? When you're in the grocery store, in line, ask the people around you how they're doing. And they'll tell you, you know what, things really suck. And that's what I think, I think that's what the truth is with respect to the reality of the economy.
I mean, you're mentioning groceries, and I'm thinking EBT, and I know November 1st, they're cutting back. And what's amazing is that we're sending billions over to Israel. We're sending billions over to the Middle East. We're sending billions to Saudi Arabia. We're sending billions everywhere else. But they decided to cut EBT for people, because what do we have, like 50 million people now on food stamps? Now, I know November 1st, this is when it's going to happen. This is just, how your opinion on this. Do you think the government or Obama administration is doing this on purpose to set off some type of rioting?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in, people, some of the people that I work with were like, Fabian, that's crazy talk. But, this last time around where you saw EBT cards not work for a Saturday in multiple different states, I think that was really kind of like a dry run or beta test, if you will, on what happens when they shut down the EBT system. And look, we have historical precedent for this. I mean, the Romans did this all the time. Everyone listening has likely heard of bread and circuses. Well, you had Caesar basically giving people free food and all kinds of entertainment. A large majority of the Roman people lived off the government. And when they wanted some kind of change or they wanted some kind of rioting from the people, they would cut off the bread and circuses and people would go ballistic. And so you have that now. I mean, look, if you have people fighting over a pair of Air Jordans, what do you think they're going to do when the food and the EBT card stops working? So, of course, Obama has and the stats are about 100 million people on some level or another dependent on some kind of government handout. So when those government handouts stop trickling out, that's really Obama's private military force right there. 100 million people, of which probably 40 million will go out, start rioting, burning things down, and that's likely how he would end up trying to make some kind of play to seize control. But look, I think what people really need to know the most about EBT cards and about the whole government entitlement thing, Dave, is what government tries to do and what government will always do is they try to enslave you with benefits. That's what they're doing with Obamacare. That's what they're doing with the food stamps. And that's to me the saddest thing, because I'm a real big believer in the individual. I believe everybody out there has a unique ability that they could use to, build a business, make the world a better place. And unfortunately, government robs that from people. And they do it on purpose because they want you. I mean, we look throughout history, the easiest thing in this epic struggle has always been, do you want to be a slave to the state, or do you want to take full responsibility over your life and really be in charge of what happens in your life? And for most people, unfortunately, it's easier to be a slave, not be responsible over their own life, and have someone take care of them. A great business philosopher named Jim Rohn, and he's not the sports guy, Jim Rohn. His last name is Rohn. He said it best. He said, look, if you don't have a plan for your life, chances are someone else is going to have a plan for it, and you're not going to like that plan. And that is absolutely so true. And that's what we see with these millions of people literally on the government, sucking from the government teeth.
No, and I understand, but in today's world, the way they've created everything and the amount of jobs that are out there makes it very difficult. And again, I understand what you're saying, but not every person has I guess they do have the ability, but sometimes they just don't have the know-how, and they've been working for another person for a very long time, and they don't know how to get out of that and start something themselves. So what they do is they continually look for that job, and they say, well, I can't find one, so I need help from the government. I can't afford food, so I need to go on EBT. I need unemployment because I still, I'm looking every week for a job. And I know a couple of people like that. And jobs are very hard, especially where I am, are very hard to come by. And a lot of the jobs, especially in Manhattan right now, are consulting jobs where they're not full-time, you don't have benefits. And I know a lot of people in technology right now who just recently got laid off that are having a very difficult time finding work, and for them just to go and say, I'm going to start something, I don't think it's their mindset to do that. So they end up going on to food stamps. They end up taking the unemployment for as long as they can take it until they find that job. And I believe this is why we're seeing so many people on the government programs now.
Dave, I agree with you 100%. Everything you just said is right on the money. The greatest way the greatest way to create jobs and build prosperity is free market capitalism. I mean, if you had government completely get out of the way, you'd be able to unleash a real economic growth in this country where the producers and people that have an idea or people that are the innovators could begin to create things, and they'd be able to offer, good jobs to people. But instead, you have the exact opposite. You have government that is doing everything they can to make it harder for the job creator, to make it harder for somebody to, take their idea to market. And, I'll tell you another thing too, look, you just look at the statistics like on manufacturing, right? In 1950, my buddy Michael Snyder from the Economic Collapse blog has these great statistics he puts out all the time. And he had this one where it was in 1950, we had about 12 million manufacturing jobs. In 2012, I think the number was around 13 million, even though the population had more than doubled. And so what I usually tell people about, jobs, Dave, is that we're going through a fundamental paradigm shift right now. And the whole job paradigm is pretty much over. That whole idea that you could go somewhere and work and have job security or get benefits, it's over. And in my opinion, will not come back unless, we return back to free market capitalism, which that's years down the road unless something drastic happens. And so I get it. A lot of people, they'd rather have the security or they don't want to take the risk as being an entrepreneur. But in my personal opinion, when we talk about what are the steps you could take to survive an economic collapse, what are the steps you can take to survive the government tyranny, what have you, I add to the list, in addition to buying gold and food storage, having guns, all that stuff, I add to that list becoming an entrepreneur. Because if you're in charge of your own life and destiny, you don't then need to depend on government or, for that matter, anybody else, to give you a job. And look, I get it. Some people won't be able to do that. But the bottom line is that, look, people need to decide right now. Do they want to be dependent on somebody else, or do they want to take the bull by the horns and they want to be in charge? And I think ultimately that's what this is about.
No, and I agree. And actually that's what this country was built on. People going out and producing, actually most of them were their own boss, building their own businesses. And this is how the country grew, actually. Not by sitting in a cube, typing on a computer. Well, back then they didn't have them, but just, they were out there making something and using their imagination and creating and going for it. Today we don't have that, but we need to get back to that. I do agree with that.
Yeah, so hopefully, that is just critical. I always say this. I always say that what would my grandparents do? I think that generation from the 40s and 50s, they had it right. They understood the idea of hard work. They understood the importance of saving a little bit of money for a rainy day. And basically they were just like, look, government, just get out of my way. Just let me do my own thing and let's leave it at that. And we've really lost that way, and we're losing it with our kids. I mean, I make it a big point of trying to really educate my kids about the founding fathers, about what this country really stands for. But I see, what their buddies are learning at school. And I mean, it's all basically, propaganda about Obama and global warming. And I mean, it's only going to get worse until all of the individuals that are listening to this, everybody, does something to try to right the wrongs of what this big criminal government is doing to this country.
Listen, I completely agree, and I really want to thank you. This was really great. And just one more time, just tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so they can go to FabianForLiberty.com, and also my YouTube channel is Fabian for Liberty, and they can go to the notehouse.us. That's where I basically post all my commentary about real estate. There's a lot of other good information on that site as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.